Hello, friends. Give me just a moment here. All right, here we go. Whoopsie. Okay, so I didn't get any questions this time, so hopefully somebody will join. If you don't, then that's cool. I'll do another one if anybody wants me to, and if you don't, that's cool too. The one question that I did have left over from last time was a common one about releasing EPs versus full lengths, which comes up all the time. And my answer to that is that I think in general, people obsess about that too much. I think that, um, but if I had to, I think that at the end of the day, if you're putting out good content, then it will get traction, whether it's an EP or a full length or single or whatever else it is. But I will say that it's a lot. I mean, it's hard enough to write one good song. It's a lot harder to write 10 or 12 good songs. So if it was me, I would probably just release a bunch of singles and EPs and see if anybody cared. Um, and if they didn't care, well, then problem solved, right? Then, sorry, I have this cut on my lip. I bit my lip from doing jujitsu, and it really hurts when I talk. Um, so I guess basically you put out some singles or some EPs, and if nobody cares, well, if they don't care about one song or four songs, I don't think that putting out an album is going to make them care, right? Like that's just kind of like multiplying zeros. So that's what I would do if it was me. And in general, I think the sort of success or failure, the reaction that you get to releasing any song or album, whatever it is a byproduct of all the stuff you did over the past few months before that. So, what content did you put out? Like, let's put it this way. So, a lot of bands kind of, half-ass their content for 6 months or something like that, and then they put out um, a song and really hustle for a week or something or 2 weeks around that song, and then they, hope for the best, and either they get the traction they're looking for or they didn't. And then they kind of go quiet again until they have another thing to promote, whether that's a show or a song or whatever. So that's one way of doing things. But on the other hand, what if you thought of yourself as an entertainment, I'll say personality, or set of personalities? If you thought of yourself as an entertainment brand first and foremost, that also put out music, and what if you spent the next 6 months producing content with the sole goal of entertaining people, whether that is videos or images or whatever it is. If the only thing you put out, if you did nothing for the next 6 months but put out content that you hoped would entertain and inform people, and then you released a song after 6 months of doing that, what do you think would happen? I think you would get way more traction for that song than you would if you did what most bands do, which is, like I said, kind of go quiet for or be quiet for months on end and then go hard when it's time to promote something. And there's a couple. I mean, it's pretty simple. Basically, you can think of it as every time you put out a piece of content in which you do not ask your audience to do anything. And remember, asking them for their attention is asking them for something. When you're asking them to listen to your song or go to your show or whatever, that you are asking them to do something. And what if you did nothing but put out content for 6 months where there was no ask? Every time you do that, that's like putting something in the bank, putting money in the bank. Well, but it's not money, it's goodwill. You're putting goodwill in the bank. And then in 6 months, if you've done that every day, now you have a lot of money in the bank, because when you ask somebody, so when you give people content that's entertaining, that's putting money in the bank. When you ask them to do something like buy a ticket or listen to your song or whatever it is, you're asking them to do something, that's like making a withdrawal. So I think that is the way I would think of all this. Whether it is a album or a single or an EP or whatever, to me is secondary to how much, what is your balance? That's really the question. When you release anything, whether that's a song or EP or whatever the fuck it is, video, what is your balance at that time? Because remember, every time you release something, you're asking your audience to do something, to buy something, to watch something. You're making a withdrawal. And the success of that withdrawal depends on how much you put in the bank over the weeks and months and maybe even years leading up to it. So to use the example of Periphery, who I've worked with a whole bunch, like if they sell a lot of shit, and they get a few complaints about it, but they have like coffee and they're doing these camps and tours, and they have like they ask they sell a lot of shit to their fans. They make a lot of asks, but the fans are, pretty much never really have a problem with that. There's a few people that complain, of course, because there's always going to be a few of those people, but by and large, the fans are cool with it. And that's because those guys have spent an enormous amount of time over the past like decade or so, going back to Misha's forum days when he was Bulb, posting on, whatever the Ultimate Guitar forums, where the fuck he, got his start. They've all been making deposits in that bank for years, so that when it comes time for them to make a withdrawal, there's a balance there to cover that. So that's my answer to this question of releasing EPs or singles or albums or whatever. Like, that's the wrong thing to focus on. The format is not the thing that is going to make you successful or unsuccessful. It's how much do you have in the bank is what's going to make it successful or unsuccessful. And I understand that that's difficult for a lot of musicians to sort of come to terms with, because when I've mentioned this to some people, like, well, I don't, but I don't want to be a content creator. I just want to be a musician. And I would say, well, I don't know what to tell you. I think that's just the world we live in, is that now, if you want to be a musician, you need to be a content creator. You need to be a media brand, really. First, I don't know if I'd say first and foremost, but it's like I said at the beginning of this, you have to think of yourself as a media brand that also creates music. You can't, if all you create is music, I think you're going to have a pretty tough time really getting attention, regardless of whether you release. I mean, think about it. Like, do you really think that the reason why you aren't getting attention is because you released an EP instead of an album, or vice versa? Like, do you really think, and I don't mean this to sound harsh to the person who asked the question, but do you really think that that's the reason why you maybe aren't getting the traction that you want? I mean, if you ask yourself that question, it's kind of obvious that's not the reason why, right? It's something else. It's the story you're telling. It's like, what is the basic story that you're trying to tell about who you are as an artist or a band, and how are you telling that story through the content? And then, that all adds up to like your bank balance. And then when it comes time to do the release, that's when you're making the withdrawal. So that's my answer to that question. If anybody else has any other questions, you can ask them here in the chat. If you don't have any questions, okay, we got a WrestleBotch here. Ryan, great analogy with the deposit/withdrawal. I get asked to post ads in my IG story all the time, and I try to keep a similar mindset, i.e., what's in it for my audience. And this is actually a good point. Is I think, sorry way to put it. Stories are interesting because I think for whatever reason they feel you have varying degrees of freedom on any platform. For example, if I was to post an Instagram story, promoting somebody else's shit, I'll do that pretty often, and I don't view that as making a big withdrawal. On the other hand, if I was to make a dedicated video for YouTube about something, that is a big withdrawal, and the expectations on those two platforms are just different, for whatever reason, and we could, maybe intellectualize about why they're different, but the fact is that they are. So that's maybe another thing to think about. Tweets, I would say like tweets and Instagram stories are pretty disposable. And it's interesting because Instagram stories actually get more engagement than a lot of other things. And if you're not focusing on stories, by the way, if you have something to promote or you want to build any sort of a brand and you're not putting a lot of thought into your stories than you should be, because that's where a lot of the action is. Like I'll get 3, 4,000 views on any of my stories. And, because I have enough followers, there's swipe ups also. So stories are a pretty powerful thing compared to a lot of other platforms. So something to think about. From Green Day, the Beatles, did you hear about Atreyu's anniversary? And is it just me, or do they not really get talked enough about these days for their influence in metalcore? I feel like I feel like the sort of nerds like us who care about that kind of thing understand kind of where they fit, I think. Um, but they took I think they took a bunch of time off. I think. I think they probably took like what, like 7 or 8 years off or something. I'm not sure. But it feels like they were not really part of the conversation for a long time, and I think that's probably part of it. They didn't whatever they had their biggest album in 2005 or whatever it is, and then I feel like they kind of fizzled after that. I would have to look into it. And then they came back in 2014 or whatever it is with that new album. Well, new at the time. Think Alex doesn't do himself any favors, and I don't know him, but we have a lot of mutual friends. He seems like a decent guy, but he doesn't do himself a lot of favors with how he talks about that. I think sometimes in interviews it comes across in a way that people feel is obnoxious, and so I think when anybody, it's like if you want to get credit for something, and you tell someone, "Hey, I should get credit for this," that makes people want to go, "Fuck you, man! You don't get credit for that." Like it's one of those. It's like a nickname. Like you can't pick your own nickname. Other people have to pick that nickname for you, and if you like it, then it's not a good nickname. And I feel like sort of the same thing. Like the more a band or anybody else suggests that they should get credit for something, the less that they will get credit for it. Um, okay, question from Luke S. I don't know how to say your last name. Sochaki, maybe. Did I say it right? I really like the new music versus old music video you did. The way you laid it out was awesome. From a marketing perspective, what is a good way to reach a large audience of 60 plus people, meaning people over 60? So hockey. Okay. Well, it's not too far off. We have a lot of older clients that we can't really mass email with a CRM. Phone calls are rather slow. LOL. What about Facebook? Um, Facebook is very popular with old people. And maybe I don't know if they use groups because I don't really have a lot of experience marketing to that group, to that age demographic. But there are a lot of over 60 people on Facebook, so I don't know if that's maybe an option. Um, and yeah, that is a tough one. So here's something to think about. I don't know if this will really help you or not. Probably not, but I'll say it anyway because it might be interesting to someone. When you're thinking about like any group of people in terms of marketing, there are three things that I think you should kind of three ways you could look at it. The first is sufficiency, which is, are there enough of these people to matter to the business? For example, left-handed redheads who play bluegrass and live in South Africa is probably not a large enough group of people for most businesses, right? Because it's too specific. So first question is sufficiency. Are there enough of them? The second thing to ask is addressability, which is provided there's enough of these people, can we reach them in some way? and which is sort of the question you're asking here. And then the last question is receptivity. So if we do reach them, will they like what we have to say, what we have to offer? Um, and in most cases, addressability is not really a problem. Um, but this is one case where it does seem to be a challenge. Um, I would look into Facebook and also SMS. I don't know how you would get them to opt in. That would be tricky, but I bet you that they text their kids and grandkids and stuff, so they probably are on their phone. And I would look into that. There's also like Facebook Messenger. They probably talk to. I bet you they use that or WhatsApp. I don't know what country you're in, but Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp. There's a lot of like bot pro like platforms for that you can use to communicate with them in a lot of the same ways that you would email, like do like broadcasts to Messenger and set up Messenger bots and all that kind of stuff. So that might be something to think about, but that is an interesting one, and I don't have any direct experience with marketing to that group. So I don't know if that was helpful or not to you, but I'd be interested to hear what you come up with there because that is a tough challenge. Good idea. A lot of it is recurring appointments, and my God, I wish I could automate it. Facebook groups are a good idea, and SMS too. I'm sure there's some application that automates texts, right? Yes, there are lots of them. I don't know your particular stack in terms of what software you use and what would make sense. The most popular SMS platform is called Twilio, Twilio. Whether that would be a fit for you or not, I don't know. But there's lots of other like SMS providers that I would have to know more about your CRM and what I don't know. I don't know enough to recommend one in particular, but there's tons and tons of those. A lot of CRMs will handle this. I'm pretty sure that Active Campaign does, but I would have to confirm that. Infusionsoft will. There's a lot of CRMs that do SMS, or sometimes they'll have an add-on. Like Infusionsoft has an add-on called Plus This that will uh, make the SMS messaging capabilities a lot more robust. So maybe look into that. If your CRM does not support it out of the box, there might be some sort of integration that does. Look up Zapier, Zapier, if you don't know about it. Zapier will connect almost any piece of software to almost any other piece of software. It's fucking awesome. So, for example, you can do things like when you add a row in a Google spreadsheet, it will trigger fuck, I don't know. I should have a better example right now off the top of my head, but like Zendesk. So we use it for Zendesk that when somebody fills out a row in this particular Google spreadsheet that they want to cancel their membership with us, it creates a ticket in Zendesk that says, "Hey, this person wants to cancel. Here's their information. Please process them." We have another system for that. So Zapier is if you guys do any sort of marketing at all, I would highly suggest looking into Zapier if you run into the situation as you oftentimes do with marketing automation where you have two pieces of software that you use that are both great, but they don't talk to each other. Zapier will be that thing in the middle that connects them. So I don't know if that would be helpful. Feel free to send me a message or anything like that if I can help. I'm certain that you can automate all the stuff that you're thinking of. I don't know. Does anyone else have any questions? We only have a few people watching. I guess you guys don't care. That's okay because I have other shit to do. If anybody is watching this after the fact and you have other questions, I will do these as often as you want me to, or as not often as you don't want me to, whatever works for you. So, yeah, I guess I will sign off now. But if anyone watching this has other questions, leave them in the comments here or message me, and I will do another one of these answering your questions because I love talking to you guys. All right, everybody, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.